How have your medications changed in this time?
They've changed greatly because in 1997 referred me to, and he referred me to the epilepsy clinic. And eventually I got to see, and also new epilepsy drugs had come in. And he experimented to a certain extent with lots of drugs. And finding the right balance is not an exact science. But eventually he found a combination that suited me. And I've been on that particular combination ever since. And it made me much more mobile and alert. And that happened in June 2002.
And in terms of the state of seizures that you have, what sort of meds do you have for that?
Well, obviously rectal diazepam is rather antisocial. And we have continued to be allowed to visit the family in America, which is important now as we have grandchildren there. And I'm now allowed to carry midazoline. And my husband has been trained to administer that. He usually carries the midazoline. It also means that he has to be with me always, which is an added strain on him. But then, of course, he is my carer, as well as my chauffeur.
In terms of sort of accessing other support and needs at home, then, do you access any other services at all?
I have tried to access social services. I'm afraid we didn't get very far with that, because what I was aiming to do was try and get a plan worked out for if anything happened to Michael. But they said, just wait till the crisis happens and then we'll do something. So I'm afraid we gave up in the end.
Right.
We have been in touch with, we were in touch with the George Hardwick Trust, and Michael does carry a card in case he ends up in accident and emergency, which contains people that can be contacted should anything happen to him if we're out.
So apart from the state of seizures, have you been in hospital at any other point for anything else?
Yes, for various things. I did have a long spell when I was troubled with breast pain. It was in the 1960s, and that went on for a long time, and I was under.
But in terms of your epilepsy, since epilepsy was diagnosed, has anything else happened to you that you needed to go into hospital for?
Yes, I had a stroke in 2008.
Can you describe for me what happened?
Yes, I was admitted to accident and emergency.
And you had some particular symptoms that troubled you? Did you have trouble talking or walking or?
Well, again, it hit the left side, but also it took the peripheral vision of my left eye. so I couldn't walk very straight.
So you were admitted from accident and emergency?
Yes.
Yes, and then what happened?
I had difficulty first of all in getting my first lot of medication because I was admitted in the early evening and I was due for a dose of medicine about 9 o'clock. And I suppose the nurses were following the rules and they wouldn't let me take a dose until I'd seen a doctor. And every time I asked, they said, "Oh, the doctor's coming in a minute." And I was getting very agitated about this because I didn't want to add a fit to everything else. And I always carry pill containers with me, small ones. So I took a dose.
And then what happened the following day?
I was then transferred to Ward 15. But then it was when I was transferred to another ward. The trouble started because these wards, and I have been transferred to lots of wards, they never have my medicines on the trolley until a doctor's been and prescribed them. And we always have to take supplies in. So they then go on the trolley of whichever ward I'm in. And hopefully a doctor has been round to say, yes, I can have them.
So did anything else happen at all?
Yes, I was transferred again, but quite early in the morning, so I happened to miss breakfast and also the drugs round.
So what happened about that?
Well, I protested and eventually somebody did something.
Right.
I also have trouble when I go in, as I'm always saying, I'm a patient, like a parrot. You know, although I do tend to know my hospital number and also my date of birth, which is a key to getting my notes, and I still have to parrot. Eventually he turned up.
So for the diagnosis of the stroke then, so this was all the exploration to find out what had happened to you, was it?
Yes, eventually I got a CAT scan and they found it. And I got onto the neuro ward. But eventually they wanted to do an MRI scan. But there was a snag there. And I did get right down outside the scanner, had my DVD, which you need as a precaution against the noise, and you're allowed to take with you. But luckily there was a very good technician down there and she asked me a series of questions. And I have some aneurysm clips in my head which contained metal. And therefore I was completely unsuitable for an MRI scan and I was sent back to the ward. And therefore the consultant had to find another way round to find the information, which they did by a CAT scan angiogram and ultrasound.
So that you got the diagnosis, was any medication prescribed on top?
Yes, I had to take an aspirin a day and a statin for the stroke.
So there's nothing that interferes with your epilepsy medication?
No.
And how have you been since then?
I've been fine.
Thinking back to sort of the information you were given about your condition and going back to the journey that you've had with epilepsy, what's the things that you would want to do differently or you would like to see done differently?
And perhaps Fox could have maybe mentioned it to me as well as my husband.
Mm.
And there were other things that he said to Michael, you know, that might happen, like changes in character, things like that. I think he said I might be more outspoken and a few other things, and uninhibited.